nations, ones where all the countries come and negotiate about the climate goals. And there was a bunch of people, like 100 young people, like working on solutions for blockchain in the area of climate change mitigation. And Hannu was there the last evening, and we talked at the bar with some beers, and he was like telling me all these challenges, these pressing challenges that are out there. And I was like, oh my God, why didn't you tell us before the hackathon? So this time I was like, okay, we are organizing a hackathon about sustainability, and I have to have Hannu here talking about what are the pressing needs. So he has a few hats on, actually. He's working for the government of Estonia, sorry.
Almost.
Estonia. Almost. Estonia, and he's one of the negotiators of these treaties in the climate space, but he also has some private projects and companies in the energy space. And I won't talk longer and do more mistakes, so I'll let you talk yourselves, and please.
Thank you very much, Stefan. So I was very happy to meet you, and okay, it was like 1 week or 10 days after negotiating at the UN conference, and I got also a little tired of that. So I used the opportunity to escape to see young people and see the future, where the future will hopefully take us, to get some inspiration. So it was, I was very happy. So I don't regret, and now I'm here. So I have half an hour. I have prepared like 20 slides representing around 20 years of my life. So I have been very happy to be part of the transformation, the move towards a cleaner environment, and driven by the Kyoto Protocol, which is now being replaced by the Paris Agreement. So let me, and I will speak about a lot of projects, a lot about programs that have been already implemented. Some of them are on the way of implementation. I speak about Estonia, former Soviet Union countries, but all these examples serve as what could be done in the rest of the world under the Paris Agreement to meet the goals. But not only, let's not talk only about CO2. You have seen twice today the slide on the Sustainable Development Goals, which are equally important. So ideally, each project, each initiative should not only address one narrow environmental or social problem. Okay, so that's a slide I just created yesterday. Forgot, so coming from Estonia, I wanted to double check myself where we have used the blockchain. So it appears our government has been using it since 2012 already in different fields. You can read them. So also our government has been running paperless already over 10 years, using no paper. Our people are using ID cards, giving digital signatures, now also with a mobile phone, now also with a smart ID, 150,000 people, so from population of 1.3 million. So all people have the ID cards, as I said. One number, 350 million plus digital signatures have been given over time, which is more than the whole European Union put together. So that's why I almost forget this slide. This is like day-to-day life. 2 weeks ago or more, I established a company online, signing everything with my mobile phone. So it was amazing. Tax declaration takes you 5 minutes. So I don't know how interesting this is, but you can check these facts more. You try to Google Estonia. Okay, and yeah, about technology, the backbone of the whole system is X-Road. Again, you can Google for more. I don't have a technical background. I have more background in marketing, in international business and economics. So, but over time I have learned a little, and I have an idea how it works. Okay, so let's move on. Again, I'll give you a glimpse of main drivers, what have been pushing the climate-friendly investments. So Kyoto Protocol is the past now, and it was a learning experiment. Not too many countries joined, so it covered at the end maybe 10-20% of global emissions. So big countries, US, China, did not implement. So the effect was not too big, but it was a great learning exercise, preparation for the future. And now in the Paris Agreement, we have all countries almost joining and having ratified the agreement. And they have already prepared national plans how to reduce CO2. They are called NDCs, National Determined Contributions. Some of these terms, what I got tired of at the UN process. So there's a lot of these terms around. Okay, so each country has drawn up a plan. The problem today is the plans are not too ambitious. If these goals in these plans put together, they would lead to a 6 degree plus 6 degree warming instead of the 1.5 degree goal. So the most important is to step up the ambition, and that's the whole aim of this UN process, a meeting twice a year, trying to raise this ambition, and the EU, for example, is trying to show the lead here and implementing more quite tough policies at home. So also on the Paris Agreement, $100 billion each year has been promised from the rich countries to the developing countries. And this, let's call it climate finance for there's two sides, adaptation and for they call it mitigation, but to reduce CO2, but also already to adapt to the changes in the environment. So a lot of money will be flowing, and this it's not a topic for today, but that also relates to huge opportunities to track these flows, to make it more results-based, to check whether what's the effect on CO2 reduction on sustainable development goals. So what I have learned today, that there should be opportunities around. Okay, and yeah, I mentioned the EU that has already set the goals by 2030, even by 2050, to reduce the CO2, also to increase the share of renewable energy, and to improve the energy efficiency. So the process is ongoing now. The European Parliament is trying to step up, make these, also the EU goals, even more ambitious. Okay, so now introduction to emissions trading. I was thinking very long how many slides I should prepare, but since I have all these project examples, so I will not talk too long. So the main terms, or what is behind the trading, that was something I learned. One of the things I remember from the school times is the theory of comparative advantage. So why do countries trade? Is because the countries are different. So it makes sense to reduce CO2 emissions in selected sectors in one country instead of the other one. So it doesn't, and it's a great area, because from global warming point of view, it doesn't matter in which point of the world you reduce the CO2 emissions. So here the comparative advantages of countries and regions, sectors should be exploited, and the CO2 is related to energy, transport, a lot of sectors. So cost efficiency. So of course, going to reduce emissions or buying these carbon credits from another project or program, the transaction costs should be minimized. Again, an opportunity I will address more with my project examples. A central term is avoidance of double counting. And that means that primarily, as I mentioned, each country will have its own program and its own goals, and should primarily focus on meeting these goals, reducing. So if they reduce CO2 at home, they should not be allowed to trade these emission reductions for use by another country. So that would be cheating. That would, that's the meaning of double counting. So that would enable the buying country to just continue polluting, and there's no effect on the, there's a different effect. The result is growing emissions, not reduced emissions. Okay, there is a graph on, there's one picture of the different evolving carbon markets around the world, so they're very different in nature. It hasn't even yet been defined under Paris Agreement what will be the common metrics. Will it be ton of CO2 or not? Probably it will be a ton of CO2. But the challenge will be, and again, to exploit or to make use of the comparative advantage is to link these different national markets together and reduce more, achieve more in countries where you get more emission reductions per one US dollar invested. So here, blockchain could play a role in linking these different markets. The other graph is the price development. So since the whole area is very, let's say, politics driven, so the politics has had a huge impact on the price. So again, it has made sometimes makes difficult to plan or risky for the project developers to go and start addressing some opportunities. What we have heard during the last presentation, there are many opportunities around, but there has to be a demand by somebody who will finance it. So, but if the demand and supply is affected by politics, that makes it a little difficult. So hopefully this will change. The ambition will be stepped up, the demand will grow, the prices will grow, enable to also address projects, programs that are more expensive, because some of the low-hanging fruits, especially in Europe, already have been addressed. So it gets more and more expensive. Okay, I will not stop here. You can study it later. That is a complicated monitoring. Let's say, in order to trade these emission units, you had to go through a very complicated process under the Kyoto Protocol, with the first developing the project and then monitoring, reporting, and verification of the results. And there was a heavy involvement of independent auditors called accredited independent entities by the UN. So, and of course they were not cheap. So this made it quite impossible to address smaller projects. One solution was to bundle projects together. Okay, who want to again learn more? There is an interesting initiative that was also talked about at the Hack for Climate event in Bonn. So it's an initiative funded by Swiss and Liechtenstein governments, where they are undertaking a study to find the application areas for blockchain related to implementing the Paris Agreement, from the UN level monitoring systems down to national carbon markets, to climate finance, etc. So unfortunately, yeah, we can continue talking quite long on that, but let's. Okay, now moving to my practical experience, and as I said, I've been quite lucky to be involved and being a developer and advisor of many renewable energy projects to start with. And that's much thanks to the fall in the cost of technology. So it's not only policy that is driving action, it's also the technology innovation and development. And there's a relation to policy. If policy creates demand, that will lead to mass production, that will bring the costs even further down. So this was an interesting slide from the IEA report. I advise very strongly to read that. Maybe it was put to your package of readings. So like the cost of sensors, the cost of PV and the batteries. So that is leading to a revolution. Again, from the IEA report, I like that slide, which is addressing the 3-4 main areas where we will see big changes coming up. That's related to maybe the last question is where does it make sense at the home level to produce green electricity, or is the economies of scale, let's leave it to the big producers. But like the case with Estonia, we have 2 big power plants located at one corner of the country. There's also a security aspect. There is a transition losses all the way. There's a security aspect. There are many aspects why decentralization makes a lot of sense. Okay, and then the trend is now, or what we see happening, I will come to more practical examples, is the interconnection between energy and transport because of the electric vehicles. And you can use the electric vehicles to balance the intermittent or variable generation of wind and solar energy. So that's quite simple, and that's already being addressed. So these are useful slides and some analysis of what we will see happening over the years to come. Okay, sorry, more slides. So I try to. Can I go over time a little? Maybe 5 minutes. Okay, then quickly. Okay, so this is an example of project-based emissions trading, where we had developed a bunch of wind power projects in Estonia, and we were missing a piece of financing to make it interesting for the investors. And there came the Kyoto Protocol and came the opportunity to trade these emission reductions from these wind power projects, also from hydropower, from biogas, and many other. So my job was to prove and to take care of all that cycle of project development and also monitoring, reporting, and verification involving these independent auditors who were very expensive and that could, in the long term, or in many cases, be replaced with ICT and blockchain and Internet of Things. So, for example, there were cases where there were people who formed a team coming from Germany, 2 people just to check the power meter, involving flights, etc. And the cost was 5,000 to 10,000 euros per each year, just to check the power meter, whether there was any cheating or not. So there is some potential. Again, this is an example from the past, but there's many similar stuff happening and will continue happening. Okay, this is now a very massive, let's say, program where Estonia helped other countries, European governments, and Japanese corporations under the Kyoto Protocol. We helped to reduce CO2, change of our emission rights. Our government had already met the Kyoto target, so we had created a surplus because of economic reforms. partly because of collapse of the Soviet Union. So some of the heavy industry moved away. Anyhow, we had this surplus emission rights, and there was a demand. And what we promised these European governments and Japanese was to invest all that money into new programs to make sure that this will lead to emission reductions, to further emission reductions, and also lead to other environmental and social benefits. And here I'm already, again, this was my thinking from yesterday, and today I have learned even more. I mean, we could have, and we can in the future, we can use more smart contracting and ICT solutions to ensure to the one who is investing, who is buying, who is the sponsor, to ensure that this money will be greened. This will go to the right place, having an effect. Okay, a lot of numbers you can study later. So how we invested that money. You can see some also pictures if you can't read. And again, you can, when you read the lines, you can associate this with potential application of blockchain, like starting from, I have some special sites also, but I talked about wind farms already, energy efficiency of buildings. So we renovated 500 apartment houses. We renovated 540 public buildings, so it's quite massive for a small country like Estonia. And of course, we wanted to make sure that this will not just lead to a nice facade, a nice building, but also energy savings, which translating into CO2 emission reductions. So again, there's room, and also people who implemented these programs, they are using already a lot of ICT to monitor, and we created a very transparent public platform where you can see each project online. So the same with all these. I don't think I should go in detail, but monitoring the use of the trams, the buses, micro renewable energy. Okay, I have some more slides on that coming. Electromobility, maybe one of the most, one of my favorites. Also, where we Estonia can differentiate from others. We have covered all country with quick chargers for electric vehicles, and we introduced grants to people. We gave social workers, we gave electric cars, which has resulted in a lot of energy savings, a lot of awareness. It was done because of also to educate the people. We put electric cars on street in 2 cities where people can open the door with mobile phone and test it. So that has been running now for several years and has been just privatized. So the infrastructure is there, the awareness is there, and now if the cost of EVs falls further, it could lead to a revolution because people know what it means and the infrastructure is ready. So when planning, I would put a lot of focus on infrastructure when we're implementing similar projects in the rest of the world. So again, there's heavy use of ICT related to quick charging, related to these car sharing, etc. I will not go in details. Okay, LED street lighting, again an area where already ICT is used. We implemented, actually we converted 7 full cities to use LED lighting. That was at that time unique in Europe. And that leading to about 50% energy savings, and half of this 50% came from automation and from some sensors as well. But we can develop it further with the new programs. We have now 43 million from European Union to finance new cities, and where we could use much more IoT and sensors and applications to achieve even more energy efficiency. Okay, also what I'm working daily is a program targeted to Estonian manufacturing industry. And here the key is, again, we are lucky EU grants. The key is that the projects that are eligible, they have to demonstrate 5% resource savings of any resource going into the manufacturing process per unit of output. So again, huge potential for use of ICT here. Okay, now I have many favorites. This is an island that I spend my summers, already 20 years. And unfortunately, it has been running, they have run them on diesel, which is the most expensive way to generate power. Unfortunately, that's the case in very many islands in the world when you travel around still. So it's very expensive, it's very not environmental. There can be also leaks and emitting CO2, etc. So finally, we managed with a community. First, we built this small wind turbine. You can see 1 kilowatt. We came together 5 days. There's a video I can send you. In 5 days, we built a wind turbine. We put it running to demonstrate that if the power company will not take care of the problem, then the community will. And finally, the power company got inspiration, and they will take care of it. And they will implement a central project this year using, and in this case, because it's technically quite complex on an island, and the community is too small to solve it, like 50, 60 people, there's not enough know-how. So here, in this case, it makes sense to solve it centrally. So 1 PV plant, 2 wind turbines. Actually, it's a retrofit of 2 existing wind turbines, and power storage, and some automation. In the second stage, what relates now even more to the ICT and blockchain could be to do more consumption management, to introduce electric vehicles, buses on the island. So to lead to further, at the end, energy efficiency and environment, cleaner environment. But again, this community, it's a little too small, maybe, with the 60 people to be a good demonstration place. So, but the nice thing is it's off-grid, meaning it's very expensive, the power system, and in the world, I have seen many. So you don't need any support, you don't need any policies. These projects should happen themselves because it is just cheaper to build, to produce power from wind and solar PV. Okay, bike sharing, everybody knows, has tested out. I will not speak more about that. Will be a project implemented this year. Who are interested can follow that, and let's see what kind of solutions they will use. Again, some of these projects, they are funded by grants, meaning the verification of the CO2 emission reductions in this case is not so important. But if we talk about the climate finance and from where I started, the emissions trading, then that is the key. Okay, more text. Again, for studying at home, an ongoing study, how we in Estonia, what could be the areas where to reduce CO2 to meet our EU goal. the EU policy, 2030 policy, is divided in two parts. One, the ETS is addressing big industries. They have their own system, and everything else outside the big industries, outside the big power companies, big industries is non-ETS. So that's agriculture, transport, and small energy. And here we have a consultant who has come up with these areas. How? And some of them are, of course, now the task is to study the marginal cost of reducing 1 ton of CO2. With about half of these programs and projects, the cost would be negative. And that was quite surprising to me. So why? How can it be negative? How can you earn money from the first day and save the planet? So the answer is simple. Especially in transport sector, you have a lot of you can implement a lot of tax measures, tax policies, which would be, of course, unpopular with the politicians. But many European governments have done that. So yeah, not much will be implemented in the short term. But if you really have to achieve this 1.5% goal, then at the end there will not be too many cheap opportunities available. You have to make the tough decisions as well. But of course, starting with more lower hanging fruits, and through emissions trading, cooperate with countries elsewhere. Okay. One more slide, very sorry. That is my hobby, besides the island. So that is more every weekend, almost. I work at that windmill, so you can visit me. I dressed up a little different than today. It's from the 18th century, so we make flour from grain, real big millstones. So. Yeah, sometimes tough as well. So some people are helping me. So, but here again, because I have the interest, we have installed solar PV. Again, I want to test on myself these some of the new solutions, consumption management. So today it's very difficult from November to January to rely on the PV, solar PV. You cannot really do it because then I will have no hot water or no heat. But in spring and in autumn, it makes a lot of sense. So the idea is I try to maximize the use of my own solar PV through this between the solar panels and between the consumer, meaning the boiler and the heat pump. There are inverters. Well, some of you study power engineering. So the inverters have the ability to control the consumers, depending on the level of output from here. So very simple. And it came for free together with the whole system. But many people are not aware of this opportunity. So in this way, you can maximize the use of your own micro renewable energy. Also, I have an electric car, like some other Estonians. So I can also charge that one. That's what IEA called smart charging. So you charge it when you have the power. And I can, if there's no wind, if there's wind, I run this with wind power. If there's no wind, I run this old windmill with solar PV. So, okay. This is for inspiration, and there's also a community. There's other houses nearby, and it makes more sense when you work together with the neighbors and using the blockchains, other solutions to try to consume. Because from my practical experience, it's really difficult to consume. In Estonia, by law, you have to consume in the same hour. If you don't consume in the same hour your own produced energy, then you don't get the economic benefit. So in other countries like Denmark, they have an annual accounting. So the government policies play a very important role here, whether it makes economic sense or not. But your technology will definitely help. Okay, that's it.